And for more on gas flaring, we are joined by Bjorn Hamso. He is Program Manager of the Global Gas Flaring Reduction Partnership at the World Bank Group. Bjorn, thanks for coming in.
Glad to be here.
I want to begin with the sort of scope of this. How widespread is flaring throughout the world?
Very widespread. About 140 billion cubic meters of gas is flared every year.
And how many countries are doing it, would you say?
That's probably 40 countries or so, that magnitude. Okay. But imagine if you took this gas and converted it into power. You could produce more electricity than currently is consumed in the entire African continent.
Wow.
So it's a big volume we're talking about here.
Absolutely. You know, there's the Paris climate talks that are coming up at the end of the year, and this will be a source of discussion. In terms of pollution, is it going to really be that big of a priority in the scope of those talks to talk about flaring specifically?
Some countries may put gas flaring reduction into their contributions to those negotiations. And also for oil companies that commit to reduce flaring, they can also show their contribution at Paris. So we think it has an impact, yes.
So you're making an effort to make that part of the conversation, I assume?
Yes, we are. We are going to be present in Paris in December, for sure.
Now, what about the justification that we hear from energy companies, why they're doing it, especially when demand is down for gas and prices are low? What do you make of that justification? Does it hold up?
In most cases, there are plans that are economically viable for reducing gas flaring, but often oil companies are reluctant to make investments into a local gas market, which they're not sure of. There are risks there that they cannot foresee. So if we can reduce the risk of these investments, we can get a lot of flaring reduced. And that's where this initiative comes into play, because we want then oil companies and the development institutions, as well as governments, to work together and find these solutions.
So give us a sense of what we're talking about in terms of cost and availability to get there. If you want people to divert the gas that should be, or that has been flared, what type of infrastructure is needed and how expensive is it?
Every flaring situation is different and need different solutions, but we are talking about investments that are beyond $100 billion on a global basis to eliminate this flaring by 2030, $100 billion.
This is aggregately $100 billion?
Aggregate
Wow.
across the world.
Okay.
But remember, there is an income side associated with those investments. But maybe I should tell you what this initiative is exactly about. First of all, those companies and governments that make the commitment under this initiative, they promise not to flare gas in new field developments.
In new field developments.
So it has an impact immediately in that respect. Secondly, the flaring that takes place around the globe, these companies and governments commit to end that flaring as soon as possible and no later than by 2030. That's the core of the initiative.
And you said you have 10 countries signed up for this so far?
We have 10 countries and 12 companies, and we have 8 development institutions that support this initiative as of today. And it's growing all the time.
And remind us again the impact on the overall pollution worldwide, because it was a really big number.
Well, we are talking about a couple of % of the CO2 emissions from fossil fuel consumption. And that's a significant amount when you consider that these emissions give no utility for people. It's a waste, and we need to stop that waste, and we need to stop that pollution.
So when you mentioned earlier that it could power the entire African continent, is there an effort underway to do just that? I mean, there's a lot of oil fields in Africa.
Yes, there are plans in every country to reduce gas flaring, but it's sometimes more difficult than we think, and that is where we think that working together, development institutions and companies and governments may make a difference. But it's also a matter of making a commitment and stick to that commitment, and that will be monitored by the World Bank and others.